See Peter is here now.
Yeah, good evening. Sorry, I've been having a tough time getting in. I've been trying to get in for like the past 5 minutes or so, and it wasn't letting me in. So
Well,
Brenda fixed it for me.
You're here, and it's 5:01, so we have a quorum. We'll call this meeting to order for the December 8th Sewer and Water Board meeting of 2020. And I will call the order here. In order, we'll go through it here. I'm Clyde Wiggins, chair, and we'll go down the line here with Don.
Don Roth.
Okay, Chuck.
Chuck Hobenick.
Okay, Drevis.
Travis Ridley.
Caitlin.
Caitlin Mercer.
And Mr. Anderson.
Anderson present.
Mr. Moore.
Also in attendance.
And the mayor.
Linda Olson present.
Okay, and like I said before, when Cheryl Wink is excused, he has to be excused. She can't make this meeting. So everybody got their minutes from the meeting on November 10th. Is there any corrections or deletions or additions to it? If not, can I get a motion to approve the minutes from November 10th?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Hi.
Okay, Caitlin, you didn't make the meeting, so you couldn't vote on that one.
Oh,
Okay. Now this is public forum, and the only thing I would ask is, you have anybody asked to come to this meeting, Brenda?
Sorry. I'm still trying to get Blair Corning in this call, just so you know. There was that public comment on email that's attached to the agenda. That's the only one I have received, and that was received on November 16th.
That was from Mr. Shapiro?
Correct.
All right.
There's Blair.
Okay. Does she have some comment on that or what?
Here I can share.
Blair's actually one of the presenters. So
Right. I know she's on there for the Biobot update.
Right. So the comment is an email attachment in the agenda. I can pull it up on my screen if you want me to. We don't have any other public comment.
Why don't you pull it up for all of us to look at it, please?
Okay. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Speaks for Excel. You can take it off now, Brenda.
Okay.
The only thing I would say on that item, does Peter want to comment to it, or have somebody on your staff reply to him?
yeah, well, we'll go with the direction of the board, what the board would like us to do. We can reach back out to Mr. Shapiro and talk to him in more detail about his concerns relative to the sewer rates and give him some more background. If that's what the board would like us to do, we can definitely do that.
How does the other members on the board feel about that? Any comments? I'm happy with it myself. I would say go ahead and contact them by telephone and talk to him and see if you can get him to some reasonable understanding. And then if not, he can take it there, give him his alternative as to where he can go from there. He can bring it to council, I would say that.
Okay, we will follow up with him and report back to the board in terms of how that conversation goes.
Okay, thank you. Somebody have a comment there? Don? Okay.
Yeah.
Next item is new business here. The Customer Assistance Program, and that's yours, Peter.
Thank you, Chair. Tonight, I've actually, I have Carol Molesky, who's with Stantec, who has been, I believe, before the board before. She's our rate and fee consultant and has worked on rates and fees for the water and sewer utilities since the beginning of the year. And one of the components that we've talked about as a companion to the rates and fees as we've developed them over the summer and into the fall, and then ultimately got them adopted in, or ultimately they were adopted by council in November, was the customer assistance program. And so Carol is here tonight to present our progress on that, and she's going to talk through our talk through what we've found relative to customer assistance programs and some of the ideas and some of the things that could work for Englewood as it relates to this type of program. And then at the end, there are several discussion points that we'd like to get a little bit more direction in terms of how the board thinks we should proceed as recommendations to council, ultimately for them to give us direction on how to proceed. So I'm going to turn this over to Carol, who's going to go through the presentation. So Carol, it's all yours.
Thanks, Peter, and good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the board. It's great to be talking to you again. And as Peter mentioned, I'm going to go over some of the customer assistance programs ins and outs. So I know you've seen some of this in some of the previous presentations, but we're going to dive into the details. First of all, the main elements of any customer assistance program, or CAP, are eligibility requirements, discounts or the level of assistance to be provided, the funding source for this assistance, administration of it, and the application process. I'm going to talk about each one of these in particular. First of all, the potential eligibility requirements of any customer assistance program have three main characteristics: income, age, and homeowners, or being a homeowner or a bill payer. So what we're talking about here is how to be able to determine if a household or an account would be eligible to receive assistance. Income is that primary determining factor. And typically we are looking at income as a percent of the federal poverty level. The federal poverty level is found online, and you can determine that level according to household size. So this table shows us different household sizes. So households of one person up to 6, and it goes even greater than that. And as you can see, the poverty level increases as the number of people in the household increases. We're just showing in this table 3 different levels of poverty because there are other customer assistance programs that actually are based on different percentages of that poverty level. Many times we also are looking at the age of your account holder. So whether it's a senior-based program, so customers 65 or over are often part of that eligibility requirement. You don't have to have that, but that is one consideration. And then also whether or not the utility bill payer is at that premise or at that account, because if you're going to provide the assistance, it's helpful if that customer is actually paying the bill. So at times we have renters and the property owner has the bill in the property owner's name. So then if you're trying to assess whether or not your customer should receive a benefit, we can't always guarantee that the person benefiting is going to receive it. So often we look at income and homeownership or utility bill payership when we're talking about eligibility. The next element is the discount or assistance level. Up to now, we've been talking about the new fee that we're proposing, which is and you've adopted, recommended is the monthly capital improvement fee for the water system. So that's the $15 a month charge that's going to be implemented in the second quarter of next year. We have presented to you an idea of offering that discount on a monthly bill equal to that capital improvement amount. There are other options that you could consider. You could look at a discount on the entire bill for all 3 utilities, water, wastewater, and storm. Or you could look at a percentage of the bill. So there are different ways that you could allow for assistance to be provided to those eligible accounts, customers. This first approach on this graph just shows the water benefit. So it would be a capital improvement fee discount per month per account equal to $15. So that total annual benefit for a customer that qualifies would be $180. So you would be providing $180 of assistance fixed. And then as that capital improvement fee increases, according to the schedule, the recommended schedule, that benefit would increase over time. The other option would be to apply a discount for all three utilities. So if you were to look at a typical bill for a typical customer using 6,000 gallons of water in a month, if they were a qualifying customer, out of their total monthly bill of $73.72, you could provide a different amount of discount. As we look at the higher discounts, we see that the annual benefit of these accounts that would receive it would be ranging from about $132, $133 all the way up to $309. We focus on that 20% discount here in this column. This would be the equivalent of that $180 benefit that a customer would receive under a discount on the capital improvement fee. So if we're looking at $180 a year of a savings for these customers, that would give them a little bit of a benefit and a little bit of assistance. We've talked to you about two other programs in your region that are pretty good examples of customer assistance programs. So we have the Castle Rock Water Cares, that's this first one, and they offer a credit maximum of $150 a year. So they limit the amount of assistance they provide per qualifying account to $150. Aurora Water Cares limits their benefit to $250 a year. The good thing and the flexibility that you have when you're looking at this kind of program and the amount of assistance to provide is that if you pick a percentage of the bill, so say you select 20% of the total bill, the good thing is that that would be a set percentage, right? The downside would be that as bills increase over time, or as customer usage would increase, if they still qualify for the program, then your assistance would increase. So it's pretty flexible. You can select whatever type of assistance you'd prefer, whether it's a fixed amount across the entire bill or a particular amount tied to that capital improvement fee or a percentage discount on the total bill. Once you've selected that discount amount or that discount approach, we would talk about how to distribute this benefit. So how do we know once a customer is eligible, how do we know they're going to get the benefit? There's three common approaches that are out there that utilities use. One would be a discount on the bill. So your billing system would identify that customer as a customer assistance program recipient, and they would have a discount according to the amount that you are deciding to provide that would offset their total bill. That's one approach. Another approach would be to provide a voucher. So that would be a ticket or some kind of a voucher that the customer would return when they're making their bill payment. And finally, you could also just adopt a separate rate. That's a lower rate that already includes the discount. So again, your billing system would reflect those accounts that are eligible for the program, and they would be paying a lower rate per month for their water and sewer and stormwater usage. Next, how are we proposing that this program is funded? We've talked to you in the past about general fund contributions, and I think that was that City Council wanted to look for ways to assist utilities. So if City Council still wants to provide some general fund contributions or transfers or appropriations to this program, that would be a great funding source. We are proposing either marijuana tax dollars or a new line item appropriation that would be up to a certain dollar amount to pay for this program. Alternatively, you could ask your own customers for help. There are voluntary bill contributions that can be made to let the neighbors help neighbors. So we've got two examples here, and in your packet, these links are active if you open it up through PDF. So you could check out the Aurora Water Cares program. The second program is called MAWS. It's the Mobile Area Water and Sewer System Utility in Mobile, Alabama. They have a really good program as well, where customers can actually donate on their bill to this customer assistance program. We've included a little excerpt from the Aurora Water Cares program where it can tell you and show you how to make donations. So there's lots of ways that people can contribute to assist their neighbors. A big question after you've decided these other elements is how to administer the program. You could administer this in-house by including a full-time equivalent or half a full-time equivalent that would be responsible for handling all of the applications and eligibility, as well as administering the benefits and answering questions. So that would require some additional staffing assistance. You could also partner with Arapahoe County or some other social service agencies. We looked up a few Arapahoe County programs that provide funding assistance to residents of the county. And a really common one is this heat and energy assistance program. You may have heard of LIHEAT before, Low Income Heating Energy Assistance Program. So it's a federal program that distributes monies to those customers that qualify for assistance. And if you piggyback on one of the county's programs, then they would do the qualifying for you. So the city would not have to put in the effort to accept applications and qualify your customers. If they qualify for the LEAP program, they most likely will qualify for your program, depending on your requirements. There are other programs that are available, and you may not have been aware of some of these. And they're quite extensive. And so that the links, again, tie us right back to where they describe the program and how to apply. So if you know of anyone who's in need of assistance, you can use these links. Next, we're going to talk about the application process. This is one of the biggest deterrents for a customer assistance program. So unbelievably, participation in customer assistance programs up until this year have been pretty low across the country. And mostly because a customer is required to come in, provide income verification, fill out this application, which is often extensive, and then reapply each year. So this is not an unusual process, but sometimes it's a little bit onerous. So the easier you make this process, the better off and the more likely customers that need assistance will apply. As an example, here is an application that's in your packet from the Mobile Area Water and Sewer System. And you can see it's pretty straightforward. It does require some time to fill out these items. And one of the items is, do you rent or own your residence? So that's important because that will help how a customer pays for their water bill. And there's actually another little section on this application for how a customer will pay for certain utilities, for food, etc. But this is just an example of how you could develop your own application that would include the key pieces of information that would be easy to administer and allow a customer and encourage a customer to apply. For all of these elements, before we get into what the cost or revenue impact this would be, we wanted to talk a little bit about why your service area, why customers in your service area might need assistance. And it's not just because rates go up, right? We all know that water and sewer bills increase over time, cell phone bills increase over time. A customer has a lot of competing needs. So when we're looking at your service area, characterize your accounts within that service area. This map shows the outline of the water service area. So that dark line is the area within which you serve customers water. And the green dots represent each one of your accounts, which is roughly a little over 11,000 accounts. That's a lot of accounts in a small area. If we look at account density, we can see this map that you see some dashed lines. Here's Broadway, and here's Bellevue on the south end, and we've got Hamden up here at the north. Here's the hospital, and it has a high yellow area. This is a large yellow area. This is an area of dense residential accounts. So the denser, the yellow, more yellow the area, the more dense your accounts are located. And it's pretty obvious. It's located around those main thoroughfares, but it's also, these are census tracts. These sections here, these blocks are tracts that the Census Bureau uses to track customer characteristics such as income and people per household, et cetera. So we used that census data to come up with these maps. The next map shows income. Out of all of the United States, median household income is about $60,293. And this was actually, this is 2018 data. The Census Bureau updates the data every December. So we'll be receiving 2019 data in next week. However, median household income, if you recall, 50% of your accounts have income greater than this level, and 50% have income less than this level. So the median is right at that median of those two areas. So the median in Colorado is $68,800 per household. In Englewood, it's lower. It's $56,500. So your service area in general has a lower income than a lot of different areas in Colorado and a lot in the Metro Denver area. The map then shows us shades of median household income. The darker the box, the lower the income. So this particular census tract where we noticed you have a high density of accounts, that median household income for all those households is less than $40,000 per household. Now that doesn't mean that there aren't people with incomes greater or less than that. There are, but in general, the median is at less than 40,000. The lighter the shading, the higher the income. We have a box around this area because we wanted to just zoom into this. Broadway, Oxford, and Quincy form the kind of like the axes of our little graph here. The area to the north of these, or in the north of this graph, has darker shading, which means this is a lower income area than this area. And we're talking about 60,000 to 70,000 here versus 50 to 60. So that's not a big difference. However, there is a difference. And it's based on these census tracts. And the little dots are your accounts. It essentially shows that you have just variations of income across your service area, and there will always be customers within these areas that need assistance. These are the people that we're talking about. Another way to look at it is to look at your renters. So out of all of your accounts, just over 1,000, you have a certain amount of renters who have to pay a large portion of their income in rent. This graph shows us that about almost 45% of renters pay more than 35% of their income every month on rent. And we know that rental rates and rent in the Denver area, Denver metro areas are pretty high. So here we see a very dark area, dark census tract, and that means that a large portion of the renters in that area are paying a great deal of their income in rent. One more characteristic, which is poverty. This map goes hand in hand with MHI. So the lower the MHI, the more you see households fall into that federal poverty level range. So if we're just talking 100% of the federal poverty level, and you remember that map or the table I showed you earlier, that you'll see that in this, say this dark purple area, greater than 20% of the households are at 100% of the federal poverty level or lower. So you have a lot of low income folks in this census tract. To pull it all together, we're looking at areas that need assistance in your service area, plus your options for implementing or recommending a customer assistance program have revenue impacts, and cost impacts. This table shows us, again, that household number for the federal poverty level we show different percentages of federal poverty level. And we've put a box around 200% because many customer assistance programs actually bump up that federal poverty level percentage to cover more people, to provide assistance to more people. So if we look at that 200% of federal poverty level, you'll see that a household of 2 people, they would be considered eligible for this program, in this case, with income of $34,480 or less. If we assume 100% of all the eligible households in your service area that are at this level would receive a customer assistance, that's about 29,000 accounts out of your 11,000. That amounts to about $528,000 per year if everyone applied and everyone was eligible, truly eligible. So if they were all homeowners or they received their bill, if they met the income eligibility, et cetera. So that would be about 528,000. If half, and by the way, this assumes a fixed amount of assistance about equal to $180 a year. If you provided, or if you received half of the eligible applicants, you would be looking at about $264,000 a year. This will vary each year, so as your rates increase and assistance increases and customers move in and out of their income levels, this amount is just an approximate estimate of how much you would be looking at. In addition, it just wouldn't be a single year. When we recommend a customer assistance program, we pretty much believe that it's going to be needed year over year over year. So that need will be always there. And then finally, this value excludes the staffing requirement if you were to self-administer the program, if you had a staff member that handles all of the eligibility requirements and applications, et cetera. It's just an idea to give a little bit of a impact estimate. We compared this annual amount against your annual revenues in your enterprise fund, so the water, wastewater plus stormwater. And this is well under that Tabor limit of a 10% amount of revenue coming from another source. So it would be within your Tabor limits. Do you have any questions? I went through this fairly quickly, and I was going to turn it back over to Peter for your discussion.
Very interesting discussion.
Sorry, I just muted myself. Thank you, Carol. I just wanted to add a couple other things. So you can see that there's a whole bunch of different ways to look at this. And so what Carol has presented is really just a somewhat of a baseline to give you an indication of what we'd be looking at here. And so there's a number of variables that we'd be looking to get some of your feedback in terms of what you think might be the right approach for a program that we set up for the city of Englewood. The other thing I would keep in mind is that with a customer assistance program like this, once it's in place, it generally they're hard to eliminate. So once we decide we're going to go down this path, and if this is the path we want to stay on, then it becomes something that we would need to be funding on a year-over-year basis, and just assume that that's an understood benefit that the utility or the city would be providing to lower income residents within the city. Some of that can be backstopped by how the system is set up. So if you do more of a fixed number, you put a cap on the amount annually, like Aurora and Castle Rock do, then you're able to backstop that amount over time, such that if it's just a 25%, that could continue to go up and go up and go up and go up every year. So there are ways to build in some kind of boundaries on this to help not let it get completely out of control as a benefit program. So some of the decision points that we'd be looking at is basically the 5 main points that Carol discussed, which is eligibility, discount method, funding source, benefit disbursement, and administration. So for example, as a sense for where to start something like this. So from an eligibility perspective, there were 3 different options. I think we're largely looking at an income-based approach. I think that's what we've been talking about for quite some time. So it's probably not something that is an age-based. We're looking more to target income as opposed to seniors. 200% of poverty is a well-established level that's a number of programs across the country utilize, and it seems to capture a level of poverty that the benefit is really impactful for those people. Discount method, you know, it could be something, if we do a percent, then that percent would go across all three enterprise funds. And so maybe it's a percent with a max benefit amount, much like how Aurora and Castle Rock have their max amount, or we could just go with a fixed number. So just your thoughts on that. On the funding source, it could be a completely voluntary program. And if people contribute to it, that's the amount of money we have and we distribute it. That becomes a little bit harder to have predictability. It could be some form of a general fund transfer, which I know has been a somewhat of a discussion point for council over the past several months as to how the general fund might be able to help support some of the needs of the utility. This could be one of those really seamless ways to create that kind of a funding source that benefits specifically a resident. At the same time, it allows the utility to stand on itself in terms of its own funding. So it's not relying on that long-term funding from a general fund source, because what we want is we want the rates and fees to support the needs of the utility. So this might be that way to provide that funding while at the same time still maintain the financial stability of the utility. Benefit disbursement, there's a number of different ways we can do a discount, we can do a voucher, those kinds of things. And then administration would be whether we want to do it in-house or whether we want to go down a path of Arapahoe County or something like that. So that's really the open discussion that we'd love to get some feedback from the board in terms of thoughts on that, or any other thoughts of what we may have missed. And I believe the chair just got up. So
Linda has her, Mayor Olson has her hand up.
okay, Mayor Olson.
Yeah, I like where you're going with all this. It's helpful, and I do think there's some decisions here. I wanted to check out the income census tract data that we have here. Are those really confined to those boundaries? They don't take, I know when HUD does some things related to income, they take in surrounding communities too, but are ours contained to those neighborhoods as
Carol, can you
median?
chime in on that?
Yes, Mayor, what we present is basically census tract information. So we're limited by the census tracts. So as you can see, there's some lighter shading out here. Because that is part of the census tract that lies outside of your service area boundaries. So we pull data by census tract, but we try to limit it to your service area boundaries to focus just on the customers that you serve. Our data here are presented within your boundary.
Okay, because I know when we look at our housing authorities in particular, which are in that darkest blue there, that when they come up with what the rate is that they can pay for the Simon Center or Orchard Place, it's based on a 3-mile radius, which includes Cherry Hills. And so our amounts are higher that they come up with that our people can pay, but in reality they can't. So I was wondering if this, I mean, if that is the income, it's even worse than what we thought it was.
Yeah, I think what we were trying to do is we were trying to get a handle on how much would this cost. I mean, that's really the challenge that
Mhm.
Stantec had, was to figure out, is this a $500,000 a year program, or is it a $3 million a year program? And so that's why we did the specific data per census tract to determine the number of households and that level of eligibility based on the program requirements. So it's a little bit different in the sense that we're trying to figure out what the real specific number is from a resolution perspective. Is
Right,
that-
you're trying to anticipate how many of these for real could be eligible to take
Exactly.
these, yeah. Well, on the first one, on the eligibility, I would say 200% probably is the going kind of thing. So I would have no trouble with that as being the first, that's the major eligibility piece. That's what we were using for CARES Act. I mean, it was 160 or something. Do you remember Anderson? And then we that was the county was using, and then we bumped it up.
I don't remember what the number was, but it was, yeah, it was more than just the standard poverty level.
And I've had some discussions with some other utilities across the country. I was on a call a couple months ago, and there were a number of them that were talking about their program level was 200% of median or of poverty level. So I think we'd be right in line with what's an acceptable approach.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah, I think the 200% makes sense.
John, did you have any comments you wanted?
Nothing specific to say at this point.
Well, let me maybe I'll back up and ask something a little more general. Does this feel like we're heading in the right direction in terms of what we're trying to accomplish based on what we've been talking about for the past several months? Is this heading in the right direction, or should we be heading some different direction? Does it cause concern? Does it alleviate concern? I'd be curious maybe on that level.
Go ward members. Anybody? want to
I
comment?
do. And if I tried to raise my hand, but I wasn't getting it to work right. Sorry about that. I have two things that concern me. One of them is under normal circumstances without COVID. Every piece of this puzzle sounds completely reasonable, but I also am on the Alliance for Commerce for Englewood board, and we are looking at a huge impact right now that is about to hit the fan. And I'm just wondering if maybe they need to relook at that $15 a month fee. And here's two reasons why. One, I don't think people are going to have any money to pay their bills starting in January at all. Number two, I have a number of family members that have worked for the city and county of Denver for the water board. And one of the things that happened there when they did their rate increases initially was that people were like, okay, we'll use less water. And so they didn't actually get to collect the money that they had planned on. And that's what bottom line worries me is your goal is valid. Your goal is good. You want to take care of, I mean, reading some of the stuff that needs to be taken care of, there's a massive amount of work that needs to be done. But I don't know if you're going to be able to collect the money that easily. I think even people within that $60,000 a year level are going to be struggling. I've also worked for Win Ministries, and one of the things we discovered at that time, which I started working for them about 20 years ago, was that 1 in 4 households were only one paycheck away from actually losing it and having to move out and find a whole other circumstance to live. Right now, the estimation is 3 and 4. So we're looking at this from a wonderful perspective of let's crunch all the numbers, let's see how we go, let's move forward. But nobody has taken into account that right now we are on a precipice of financial ew. And so that kind of worries me. And I don't think we're accounting for that.
So you want to put this back on the back burner for a while then, huh? Wait till things
No.
come up?
I don't. I just want to move the numbers down. I think people would try to accommodate the $5 level knowing that this stuff needs to be taken care of. We've only got so much time before we're in trouble. If you present it that way, I think they would scrape to come up with the money. You wouldn't have to necessarily do the assistance program, save yourself that $500,000 a year or whatever. And the fee to pay somebody to work it. And plan to take the 3 years to come up with the money instead of doing it right away at a financially critical time for most families. And I could be completely wrong. Maybe come January, we'll see a different story. But based on working with the business side of things, I know what the businesses are telling me, and they're getting ready to close down. We're not going to even be collecting revenue that we normally collect from businesses. And I can tell you that's from the people I've talked to on the ground.
Well,
So
thank you.
I throw that out there.
I agree that we have,
Go ahead, Mayor.
Yeah.
I agree that we have some businesses that are definitely struggling, and there are restaurants and bars. But if you look at our financials from the last several months, what you're suggesting is not necessarily playing out. But we have to go ahead with the CAP program, I think.
Okay. All right. Well, then
Especially at this point in time, we can't back off of this. But a good question would be to ask what our unemployment rate is in the city of Englewood right now, which I don't know.
I just saw yesterday that I thought I saw that Colorado's unemployment rate went to 4.9%. The reason why I saw a story on it was because as soon as it dips below 5, there's an effect from a federal perspective.
Yeah. But we do have to zero it down for Englewood. Englewood has traditionally been a lower income community. So lower wage earners and lower educational levels, which often correlate with lower wages. So, and we're a service industry oriented city with the hospitals here too, with a lot of folks that are doing service at hospitals, not the big doctors. They live across the street on the other side into Cherry Hills, but so I think it might be good to look at our unemployment rates. Only less than 15% of our sales taxes come through, restaurants and bars, which is definitely have been terribly hurt. There are some companies that are telling me in the city of Englewood that they've never done better and they're embarrassed to say it. But I don't know how, that doesn't mean our people who are living in the city are doing as well as the businesses that might be in our geographic area.
Well, I'm kind of getting the opinion here that the group, well, I don't know, but John or Don or Chuck or Caitlin, do you want to get in here? John, go ahead.
Yeah, I would just a couple things. First, I had two things. I want on Drevis's comment. I just to be clear, I think it's two different issues. I heard, to me, what she's saying is we should be delaying the implementation of the $15 fee.
Or lower it.
Or lower it. Yeah, fair. The issue of moving forward on the cap is not counter to that. It's actually consistent with that. The cap issue is one that if you think the need is bad today, wait till tomorrow.
Right.
So I just want to make sure we're all paying attention. Yeah, Drevis is making there's a separate point she's making. The issue I have on the cap itself is just what is the desired outcome from this board? The number one decision ultimately is the level at which council wishes to fund such a program, and I would assume that more or less the question before, well, I would take the question before the board to be, given an allotment of a certain amount of money, how might we implement it, and might it look like what's been presented tonight, which makes total sense to me. But I'm just clarifying, I guess that is the question for the board, that if council was willing to fund it, is this the type of program we would recommend to council to consider?
Yeah, it's really to get feedback on, are there things that people absolutely, the board members absolutely say, no, we don't want to do it that way, or yes, we absolutely want to do it. So I think 200% is a clear indication of, yes, that's something that we want to do. I think something to also point out is this could be something that's subsidized by utility rates. So it doesn't necessarily have to come from general fund. This could be a built-in line item funding subsidy within the utility enterprise itself, which makes it completely self-contained, and that's another funding source. So there are multiple ways to fund this. The reason why we were focusing on the general fund transfer was because of the discussions earlier this year of ways for the general fund to potentially support the enterprise funds, since there are such large needs in those enterprise funds. And we thought this was a very a streamlined way to create that fund, to link those fundings to a specific need associated with a customer need.
So Peter, I mean, I just think those are two very distinctly different questions. I don't know, and I've said this repeatedly, so I'm no surprise here. What a program looks like for a given level of funding is one question for me. The level of funding is one that I personally feel it's something that a council member as an elected official is in a position to decide. I don't feel I as an appointee am in a position to decide the level of funding. I get that utility, and again, I'm still welcome to input. If the prevalence out there is that these things are built into the utility rates, and it is common for boards of non-elected officials to make those kind of decisions, I'm open to that, but I've yet to hear that. And so I just draw that distinction. I think this is the financial aspect of this is a council issue, not a board issue.
I agree
But
with
yeah, I'm not saying anything I haven't said 2 or 3 times already.
Yeah, and I think that's, and I appreciate the distinction. I think you're absolutely right on that is something that would be more of that's ultimately a council decision. If we say that 200% of poverty is the rate that we want to put, and we're trying to estimate what's the percent level of participation, that's where we are showing potential maximums of funding requirements. Now, council could come in and say, we'll fund up to 200,000, even though the potential is all the way up to 500,000. So those are other discussions in terms of how we actually fund this program. But in order to be able to make those decisions, we need to understand how we've set up the base program as a whole. And really from the board, we're just looking for thoughts and inputs and ideas.
Gotcha. Well, let's poll them. How about you, Chuck? You think they're on the right track? Do you think they ought to come back?
This thing with Arapahoe County, with having Arapahoe County do the decisions of who gets where,
Do the footwork.
and where or Englewood does this. What is the difference in cost to Englewood on this whole thing?
So we estimate that, so this is an estimate, having not run one of these programs yet for Englewood. We estimate that once it's up and running, it's about a half an FTE of an employee to review applications, to ensure that, to ensure they meet eligibility requirements, working with billing to get that set up into the billing software. We think there might be a mechanism by which, if we can program in something into the new utility billing software, where there's a toggle switch that says, are they a participant in the cap? And it automatically populates the rates differently than if they aren't in the cap. We think there's some streamlined approaches there. So we think about a half an FTE. Half an FTE of the type of employee that we'd be looking for, we estimate a cost of around $50,000 a year. So that would be the embedded in the rates implementation cost associated with administering a program like that. We think that there's probably some in-house efficiencies and reprioritization of some workload that could make it so we're not going out and hiring another half an FTE. We're shifting workload and injecting, introducing new efficiencies in order to put this under existing staff. That's our current assessment.
Well, do we pay Arapahoe County to do, if they would be doing this for us? Making these decisions for us?
Carol, did you get any sense on what the charge is through the county or how they administer that? This is new to us, so we're trying to figure this out as well.
I did not, and I know Brenda, you had already brought that up. So I would need to check on that.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Chuck. Anything further? Caitlin, how do you feel about the program that they've presented to us tonight?
I think it's heading in the right direction. I kind of am on the side of partnering with Arapahoe County just to get the burden off of the city on doing all the legwork. But I think we're heading in the right direction and being able to help people.
Very good. How about you, Don?
Yeah, I really think I can't see anything there that I am terribly concerned about.
Okay. Well, I think that kind of gives you an idea there, Peter, that as a whole, the board.
Chair, it looks like Member Anderson has his hand up.
Well, yeah. Go ahead, Joe.
Well, I thank you, Chair. I just had a couple of questions. Had we, was this, Peter, was funding this built into the rates at all, or is this something we would have to, if we were going to try to fund it within the utilities, that we would need to increase the rates to pay for it?
We did not build this into the rates as they were presented earlier this year. So there's two possible ways to handle it. We build it into the rates in the this year, and then we offset some other equal amount of items so that we don't exceed what we were planning for in the year. So we reprioritize this over something else, or we come up with some kind of a external transfer in from another source, like the unassigned fund balance from the general fund.
Yeah, and if I remember right, that was the initial idea, is to fund this at least initially from that unassigned fund balance. I think council was mostly supportive of that. Of course, we'll have to have that conversation all over again, but I think that makes, at least for this year, that makes a lot of sense. And then plan on trying to, over time at least, build it in, because obviously the unassigned fund balance is not a permanent, reliable source of funds. And so I think it would be good to build it in. But just on feedback on the program as it's built, I think it makes a lot of sense to use this to offset that $15 fee, because that's where I see the biggest surprise coming for customers, especially our low income customers, is having a 4 or 5% increase year over year. They're kind of used to that. Their bills go up like that. But to get that 4 or 5% increase plus this $15 increase is going to be a pretty big hit. And if we can offer to get that burden off of them, I think that makes a lot of sense. So, and that's the way, am I understanding right that that's where those numbers was $180 a year to eliminate that fee for those low income customers?
That's correct, and that's exactly where we started.
Yeah.
And then and then we just expanded it to see what it looked like across all three utilities, so there were more options.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you.
I will say the $15, if by tying it to the $15 fee, it does create it keeps it fixed for a couple of years, and it does create that direct correlation between where from a messaging perspective, that there's this fee, but there's also this customer assistance program to help with the fee.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that.
I would just interject, that kind of fall in line with Mr. Hobenick and Ms. Mercier. that let the county kind of run the program. I like that part of it. So I think you're heading in the right direction unless somebody else has some more to add to it. John, did you want to say something more?
No, nothing more to add.
Mayor?
Chair, may I add that with the county, we also need to make sure that they will run a program like this for
right.
us. So there's that piece of it as well. But we'll head down that path, hoping that they will help us with it.
Okay. Anything more on that?
No, if you don't mind, I'd like to summarize just a couple quick points. So we'll go with 200% of poverty income based. I think is everybody thinking that tying it to the $15 fee seems like that's the more streamlined approach. Working with the county, we'll work with the county as it relates to benefit disbursement, and then the funding source. I think we'll just leave those to be more of a discussion with council when we bring this to council, which will be in early January.
I think you got it.
Okay, thank you.
Well, the next item on the agenda, item B, is the pump station rehabilitation project with our vendor and Steve, Mr. Simon. That's yours.
Yeah, so Steve Simon and our Deputy Director of Engineering is here along with Mike Assante, our Engineer 3, and they're going to talk through, we're actually gonna do some work on these pump stations that we've been talking about for the past 9 months or so, as something that's in critical need of repair and rehab. So Steve, it's all yours.
Is my audio coming through?
You are now.
Oh, well, thank you, Chair. As Peter mentioned, the action before you is to seek board approval to recommend entering into a professional services contract with HDR for engineering and design services with HDR. And so this project would cover the 4 remote pump stations that the City of Utility owns and operates. This includes 2 critical raw water pump stations and 2 booster pump stations. And there are various needs or reasons to move forward with this project. This is a message that this board and council has heard time and again this year. The primary need is a condition-based, and those first 2 bullets outline that condition need. We have a lot of degraded assets, and we need to modernize outdated assets that are inefficient or aren't using modern systems. We'll also look at or perform a demand analysis assessing the ability of the facilities to meet not only our current demands, but also our future demands. And this includes our in-city customers as well as out-of-city customers. We definitely need to improve communications and controls. One of the needs for those facilities is the ability to remotely operate. This not only provides a greater efficiency for operations, but it also allows us to more quickly respond to urgent demands on the system. 2 of the most critical facilities I'd categorize are raw water pump stations. Lack standby power. So we'll assess the need and the sizing of standby power, and then of course modernize and bring to current standard and regulations security and safety needs. That figure that I've got on the slide to the right here, that's a classic risk matrix that is used a lot in asset management. On your y-axis is the likelihood of failure of an asset, and that's how close to the end of useful life is that asset, and on the x-axis is the consequence. So what we've got is a lot of assets that are up in that red that not only are nearing or at their end of service life, but they're also highly consequential. These are very critical facilities. This slide outlines the condition findings that were assessed as part of the 2020 master plan, and you'll see that column of motors and pumps, which obviously are the most critical assets in a pumping facility. 3 out of the 4 facilities were rated in poor condition, and I'll demonstrate that here with just a few pictures of some of the facilities that were taken as part of that master plan. And what you can see here is a lot of corrosion. We've got some water on the floor there, so there's obviously some leakage in the system. So this makes it very evident that there's some need for replacement and updating here. And on the likelihood of failure side, I'd like to just go through the functionality of these systems and demonstrate how they're used and the criticality of them. So starting with our raw water operations, the thicker, lighter blue line is the South Platte River. The skinnier dark blue line that's at the bottom of your screen, just to the southeast of the South Platte River, is the city ditch. And the facility to the south of the McClellan pump station, it pumps raw water off of the city ditch up into to McClellan pump station, or excuse me, the McClellan reservoir. From the city's use, the McClellan reservoir is more of a backup system. We can discharge water out of McClellan reservoir into city ditch and deliver that up to the Allen treatment plant for treatment and distribution. But actually, more importantly for this is it's a primary, on a criticality perspective, it's a primary raw water supply for Centennial. And so they certainly will have a vested interest in this project. We've already reached out to them as a stakeholder as we run through the analysis, given their reliance on that system. As we move further north or up the page and downstream along the South Platte River, we have the Union Avenue pump station. That's the primary raw water feed for Englewood that is delivered for treatment at the Allen plant. That pumps directly off the South Platte River. And moving forward in our distribution system, so this is our potable or treated water distribution. The dark blue lines are the transmission mains that the larger pipelines that are delivering water out to the system. Up at the top right are our two booster pump stations, the Cornell and Penn pump station, the Clarkson and Hampton pump station. Those are critical facilities, less critical than the raw water pump station because there's some redundancy, and that redundancy exists from the pumps within the Allen treatment plant can actually deliver up to the zone 3 area, which is at the northeast part of the distribution system that those booster pump stations are responsible for boosting. So in the absence of those, we can deliver water through there. It's just at a lower pressure and can't really provide the customer service that we would like. And also it does provide, again, a boosting of pressure in the system. So that's the need of the project. I'm going to hand it over to Mike Assante. Mike's our newest engineer. He started a few months ago now. He was introduced, I think 3 board meetings ago, and he's going to run through, he'll be the project manager for this work, and he's going to run through the procurement process to select a vendor for the work.
Thank you very much, Steve. And to the board, I'd just like to say, as my first time speaking to you all, very much looking forward to working with you all, working for the city and serving the residents of Englewood. So thank you very much. And what we're going to be going through right now is the procurement process that our internal team went through in selecting the best design firm to partner with for this design work. And the first step in the process was the release of a request for proposal, which happened back in the middle of September. And in response to that proposal, 19 different design firms attended a pre-proposal meeting and showed interest in the project. After that pre-proposal meeting, 8 firms officially submitted proposals for this work. And the average cost was about $276,000. So in order to review these 8 different proposals, we developed a selection panel, which included members of our engineering team and operations and maintenance staff to review each of these proposals and go through a process to ultimately select the best firm to partner with. After reviewing those 8 proposals as a team, we decided to shortlist 3 firms for additional interviews so we can get some more information and more detailed information of each of these 3 firms' understanding of the project. And the next slide we'll go over, you guys can see the 8 firms that submitted, each of their overall proposal costs, as well as the hours that they plan to spend on this project and their internal hourly rate. The one thing to note off the bat is the firm with the strike through Burns and McDonald, the team determined that their proposal was not fully responsive to the scope of work and didn't adequately address everything in it. So we removed them from consideration. The rest of the 7 firms, as you can see, are shown there, and that average proposal cost was $276,000. And there was a pretty narrow range of proposal costs between $245,000 and $310,000 between those firms. And you can see highlighted in yellow, HDR, the ultimate firm that we ended up selecting, came in at $285,000, approximately, or about 3% above the average proposal cost. So the next two slides we'll spend discussing some of the unique challenges of the project and what made HDR stand out above the rest of the firms that we evaluated. And as Steve mentioned in the slides, this is not going to be an easy or straightforward project. And one of the primary reasons is that each of these four facilities, specifically the raw water facilities, are critical to providing water to the city's residents. If the Union Avenue pump station were unable to provide water or went down for any reason, that's the sole, right now, the primary supply for the city's residents. So that's going to be challenging to provide a design so that we can install these upgrades while still maintaining the operations in the existing pump stations throughout the duration of the project. As Steve also alluded to, time is of the essence for these facilities. The equipment is in very poor condition. One of our pump stations was originally installed back in the 1970s. So they're very, very old facilities, and they don't have backup power, which is another critical element to consider when we talk about providing full reliance and service to our customers. So HDR was able to demonstrate a unique understanding of each of these components that was unique between the other firms that we evaluated. So that was something that we really enjoyed from that perspective. And on the next slide, we'll go through a further overview of HDR's proposal and what made it the best proposal. The team that HDR recommended was highly experienced and had experts in their field, specifically with related to pump station design and pumping efficiency, which was very nice to see. And they also demonstrated a proven successful track record with local facilities, or local utilities rather, in very similar type projects. So it gave us high confidence that they'd be able to perform and deliver a high work product. One of the most recent similar projects was for the city of Boulder, an upgrade to their pumping and treatment facilities. And we were able to speak with the city representative there who spoke very highly of HDR. And to that extent, they also understood the unique challenges that we had just discussed on the last slide. And in summary, the total proposal cost that we have settled on is $305,000, and that includes about $20,000 in additional funds for a supplemental service to provide 3D scanning of each of these facilities. And that's a very good value-added service that most of the proposals also included as a supplemental or an add-on service. And why this is very beneficial is because it's going to allow us to see each of these facilities in great detail, three-dimensional, and it's going to allow us to design the facilities in a much more streamlined fashion moving forward as we go into full-scale design for each of these pumping stations. So with that, I'll allow Steve to wrap up with regards to the motion for this work.
All right, thank you, Mike. So Chair, the staff recommendation here is a move to recommend that City Council approve a professional service agreement with HDR for the pump station rehabilitation project for the Englewood Utilities Department. And we'll be happy to take any questions.
Anybody have any questions for Steve or Mike? Mike was a good presentation.
Thank you very much.
No questions? All right, can I get a motion from somebody to move to recommend the City Council approve a professional service agreement in the amount of $304,340 with HDR for the pump station rehabilitation project for the Englewood Utilities Department? Do we have a motion?
I move.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, do we have any further discussion? If not, can I have a vote? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
You opposed? Motion pass. Thank you, Steve. All right, Next item is C, Biobot update from the South Platte River Renewal. And Mr. Blair Corning is handling this, I believe.
Yeah, so I'd like to introduce Blair Corning. He's the Deputy Director of Environmental Programs for South Platte Renew, and it's the regional wastewater facility. He's joining us tonight because Blair has been managing the work that we've been doing with Biobot and some of the other organizations looking at the how to detect COVID. This was something that was brought up last month as a point of interest for the board, and so we're gonna have Blair give us a presentation of where we're at and what we found. So Blair, it's all yours.
All right, thank you, Peter. Good evening, Chair, Water and Sewer Board members. This is my first time being here, and I appreciate your time tonight and your interest in the Biobot project and the COVID testing that we're doing. So let me try to share my screen here, and I'll give you a quick PowerPoint. All right, can y'all see that?
Yes.
Okay. Did it change on you?
It did.
All right, it's working then. Good. That's always the hardest part. All right. Well, imagine if you can't collecting samples from 300,000 residents, which is our service area for COVID testing, the energy, the logistics, the time and expense that would go into that. And then think, what if we could understand the health of that 300,000 people using one sample that we already collect at the wastewater plant? And so that's basically what we're doing with this Biobot project is taking a wastewater sample from the collective service area and using it to determine infection rates of the virus. How we got into this, little bit of history is Peter was reading an article in Popular Mechanics and saw an article about this Biobot project, and they wanted to get 100 wastewater facilities across the nation into this and study COVID and if it could be detected in wastewater and get an idea. So good thing he was looking at it that day because it's turned into a great effort. The project with Biobot is a collaborative effort between MIT, Harvard, and Brigham and Women's Hospital. It started about the end of March, which is about the time we got into it. We were kind of one of the first involved and on the leading edge. At the height of it, they had 385 sites in 42 states that were involved in the project, which was good. And it was free pro bono. You had to pay for shipping and in-kind services to collect the sample, but the actual analysis at that time was free. So basically on our end, what we do is we collect a sample at what we call a 24-hour composite. So we have a robotic sampler there in that top picture that takes a little bit of water every hour. And then over 24 hours, it gives you an idea of what came through the plant in the last day. So we take that, we bottle it up in centrifuge tubes and mail it off to the laboratory in Boston where Biobot performs their analysis. Some of the basics, what it looks for is the virus fingerprint. It's not necessarily testing for live virus. It's doing what they call a qPCR, which is quantitative polymerase chain reaction. I'm getting out of my area here, but it's a way to test for RNA or a fingerprint of the virus in the wastewater that's coming through. What that helps do is provide trends so that public health officials can tell maybe when to helps them move that dial as far as you've seen the dial for the COVID when you go into different restrictions or when restaurants might be able to be opened based on this information. It can also warn of spikes that are coming. It shows the data 3 to 7 days before you see it in actual population testing. So it can warn of spikes and it's a cost-effective way to test a bunch of people very, very cost effectively. News of our participation traveled fast, and usually you can't get these newspapers and TV stations here if you beg them, but that was all that's been on the news for a while is COVID, and they were really interested in what we were doing here, and we were on the leading edge of the project. So we had Fox 31, Denver 7, the Colorado Sun, and even the Chinese Global Television Network of America came out, and they all wanted to know what we were up to. So it was really good exposure and a good chance to talk with them. Now I get to the report. I know this was in your packet, and this is the last report that we've gotten from Biobot. One of the things I want to say about this report is, we generate the data, we provide that data to Adams County or Arapahoe County Office of Emergency Management, which is in contact with Tri-County Health and CDPHE. So really this data is for the public health experts to combine with other data such as hospital visits, mortality rates and positivity indexes. And so this is a piece of the puzzle. This is not necessarily, they don't go by this all by itself, but I want to take you through the numbers here. So this first one, 307,861, is just the concentration of the fragments in there. They normalize that, to account for dilution and infiltration of water. And what it gives you is this graph. If you can see this graph in the middle, the blue dots are our sample readings. And you can see we started at the end of March there. So every blue dot is a sample reading. We've been testing once a week under this project. The black line underneath is the actual cases on those days as reported by the public health agencies. So you can see we kind of hit a peak here in May. We were at a peak here in November that looks like, according to our last sample, it's coming down, but that's just one sample. But you can see how it picks up the peaks. I think there would have been a peak in March there, but that, we didn't start till the end of March, so we didn't pick that one up. If we go on to the third graph, it kind of gives you an idea of your state compared to the states near you based on the color tone there. So ours is right in the middle there. You can see Montana's got higher levels. Nevada's got higher levels. Washington's got higher levels. Oregon a little lower. California a lot lower. So it just gives you an idea of how you sit compared to others. So this is the second page. Here I wanted to just take you to this normalized virus concentration in the middle. Our samples in red. The median nationwide sample for the past 6 weeks is in yellow, and you can see we're sitting right at that median level right now. So we're about average, or about at the median for virus detection nationwide. This last one is 90 cases per day. So what that does is predict 7 days from the time of this sample, according to Biobot's model. And we all know models are never right. I think someone said models are always wrong. Sometimes they're just useful. And so this is their guess at what the new cases per day will be in 7 days after this after the sample was taken. So that's about all I had as steps going forward. We're transitioning to a statewide collaboration, kind of a front range group that we've helped create along with CDPHE and Metro Wastewater of about 19 wastewater plants on the front range. And it covers quite a bit of the population of Colorado. And so they're building a dashboard, and eventually the goal is to have a public dashboard, and it's getting closer. I keep bringing it up in the meetings, asking about it. They're working on it. But when they get that public dashboard built, I will give the email to Peter, and he can distribute it to the committee, so you can go on and look at the data yourself through that dashboard. Other applications, hopefully this COVID thing will end soon, and we'll be over it. But there might be more pandemics. There might be more markers that we want to look for in wastewater. So who knows what the future holds. I always, joke that maybe in 25 years, there's a public health sub office at the wastewater plant to look for different things that they want to see. But it's a real interesting field and a real interesting development in wastewater, something kind of different than what we've been doing, but still based on science and technology that we use every day. So I'd be happy to answer any questions, but I think that's about all I had for you.
Thank you, Mr. Corning. I enjoyed it. Anybody have any questions from him? Chuck? You muted, Chuck.
Just a big thumbs up.
Oh, okay.
Thanks.
Well, thank you very much.
I have a really quick question, and maybe Peter, I thought that we were also using this before in the opioid crisis. Were we not, or was that just other areas that were?
That's something that Biobot, they have actually used this to detect opioid levels. That was one of their previous studies. So if you go to their website, they show all the articles and news stories that they've done over the years. And several years ago, they were all based on detecting levels of opioid addiction within using wastewater to indicate the levels within communities. So that was where they started it.
For some reason, I thought we were also doing that, but I guess I just got the mix up of that's how it started with them. Okay, that helps. Thank you.
Yeah, this is the first time we've done this kind of work. I know that I think they've also looked, Blair, haven't they looked at polio, or there was another thing that they were looking at?
Yeah, I don't know if it was Biobot necessarily, but this whole field they call wastewater-based epidemiology has looked at polio before and opioids, and I think the technology with the PCR analysis is at the point now where they can look at these viruses and genetic, markers in the wastewater sewage. So, yeah.
So just a piece of more information on how this is being used throughout the whole Front Range is it's much more accurate when you can do a whole building that's of people living. So if we were to attach this to our nursing homes or care facilities of some sort at their exit point, we could tell right away whether there was an outbreak and do quick testing of everybody and then quarantine them. That's how higher ed was using it in all of the dorms throughout the Front Range. Everyone was testing every day, sometimes twice a day. At DU, we were testing twice a day. We knew if half of the dorm on one side had more of it, and then we would test the whole group and then find 5 students that were positive, quarantine them for 10 days, and then it didn't spread throughout the whole dorm. And that's how universities kept open all fall. It was just quick testing, isolate those who are, let the rest go on their own way, because it's so pervasive with asymptomatic. Usually people don't know they have it. It's not, I feel bad, so I'll stay home. And they don't know they're bad for quite a while, unfortunately. So it's really interesting epidemiology science. It's just very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it also,
it's the way we can keep open is if we can use it some way a little bit more specifically.
Yeah, and I think what it also indicates is sometimes when we start these projects, we don't know how our participation is going to help affect something broader. And so really by getting in early and really being part of these solutions as an organization, we advance the technology faster because they need facilities like ours to actually test out the technology. So I think this is a good example of that success.
Yeah. And you got on television
a few times.
Yeah.
Yeah. I told him if he needs an agent, I volunteered for that.
Yeah.
So was this by the governor when we got those notices? Gosh, was it 2 weeks ago? We got the notice that there was an uptick in cases in Colorado. So was this his information point line or was that?
Yeah, I can't say specifically. I mean, what we do is feed this to Arapahoe County Office of Emergency Management. They're in turn, connected with CDPHE and Tri-County, and they put out a report. And they, like I say, this is one piece of it, but they use hospital stays, ICU bed counts, and just a whole host of other metrics to combine, to make their decisions.
Pretty fast.
It's positivity tests is really what pushes that data, that data. But you can look at that all the time on Tri-County Health Department. There's a dashboard. You can see how Arapahoe is doing all the time. You can look at hospitalizations. You can look at availability of ICU. I mean, it's open. You can see it all the time. Deaths, everything.
Thank you, Mayor. All right. Next item is D is South Platte River virtual tour.
And I'm really sorry, but I have another meeting I'm supposed to be at, but I was the one who asked for that Biobot update, so I'm going to leave now. Okay. I think we're done with decisions, right? We voted on what needed to be done. Yep. No, sorry, folks, but have a great holiday. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
We'll see you next year, Mayor.
Yep. Bye.
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, that's actually a good point. So we are running a bit long today. We can actually move this item to a future date. It's about a 10-minute video. And so if we want, we can stick this on a future date. It was just something that was asked for, or that we talked about last month because we had the videos. If the board would like to, we can actually skip this item and move to, we've got the last two old business items that we need to talk
Right.
through, and then, and we could just put that on January.
Okay, that sounds good to us. If anybody else object to it? Caitlin's much in favor of it. Okay, Peter, we'll move it on. Old business, water or sewer board vacancy, or you want to put that on next month?
No, that's just a quick discussion for the board this month. And it's really so there's a vacancy because the board member's name is escaping me, who resigned. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Mr. Martinez.
Yes, Mr. Martinez. And so that left a vacancy. And we, this board actually had, and Brenda is an alternate. Is that what it was considered?
Yeah, Drivis Ridley is considered the alternate, and apparently you moved her up to a regular member now.
Right, and so we've moved Drevis into the role of regular member, which means the alternate is now open. And so right now, I think the plan for council is to wait until the next round of board appointments in order to fill that position.
Right.
All right. It's really just summarizing that.
I noticed you got Mr. Martinez's address in, I think it was Castle Rock or Colorado Springs he moved to. Maybe Brenda knows, but I assume that the council sent him a thank you letter for his service.
Yes, I worked with the city manager's office to send a letter to his new residents, thanking him for working on the board.
Thank you. Well, then the last item is on the handbook. Members on the boards had any comments, and I guess I might have been the only one that had any comments.
That is correct.
I just brought it up to you, Brenda. Did you present it to the rest?
Yeah, so I gave it to our city clerk, and I believe that they take those comments and bring them forward to council, I believe, not sure.
Okay, well.
And so Chairman, what we've determined as part of this process is because the Water and Sewer Board is actually established by charter, there are elements of the council boards and commissions handbook that that might be different or in conflict with what the charter requirements are. And so what we're going to do over the next quarter, sometime by Q2 of next year, is work on a linking guidance document that helps link the requirements of the board and commission handbook, or the guidelines of the board and commission handbook, with the requirements that are outlined in charter, to ensure that we understand that we can succinctly describe what the requirements are between those two and make sure that we're not in conflict on anything. So that was the other piece that we wanted to just let you know we were going to work on.
Okay, very good. Well, that looks like about it, unless staff has anything they want to comment on.
I think we have just one quick thing, that we are in line break season right now for water line breaks. Deputy Director Goodman is on and can give just a really brief 1 minute of what we've been dealing with over the last 5 or 6 days.
So we've had 5 line breaks in the last 5 days, which I don't know if that's any sort of a record, but I think that's it's pretty intense. They were actually trying to finish up 2 breaks today. So they had one later last night, and then one that happened this morning. So just trying to keep after those, and it really just necessitates the need to get in and do some more long range repairs and upgrading to the distribution system itself. So our guys have been working hard. The weather's been nice during the day, but it is cold at night, and they were doing some work over the weekend. I don't know if anyone travels down Broadway, but that was a customer leak. So a leak on the customer's portion of their service line, which we kind of helped them at least kind of troubleshoot. So we were helping run triage on that too, just making it safe for the traveling public. So.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else from staff?
That is it, Chairman.
How about board members? Any board member want to make any comments? Well, just on my behalf, and I think for all the rest of the board, I wish you all a
Chair,
blessed
I'm
Christ-
sorry, there's a comment, a hand up, Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes, Joe.
Well, on the water lines, what's the timeline for patching the streets when you do it? Does that wait till summer? Do they put a cold mix in for those patches?
Oh.
I know-
Great question. It's as soon as possible. So we generally work with Public Works to do those permanent repairs or more permanent repairs. We put down cold mix on Broadway just because that was the only thing that we had available over the weekend. And then we coordinate with Public Works to get them to come out as soon as possible after us to patch.
Okay. And then I had one other question that I failed to ask on the pump, the pump project. What you had mentioned the McClellan Reservoir pump down there and Centennial, I think you said it was Centennial that uses that water. Is there any possibility of getting some financial help from them or using that and renegotiating that contract or anything like that? Because the main purpose of that pump is to make sure that we can fulfill service to them. Don't they have an interest in that? Is there any financial upside for us from that?
Yes, so that is something you are spot on. That is something that we are working with Centennial on, and there are opportunities there, and we are exploring not just the current contract opportunities, but potential additional opportunities that we think could increase our revenue through helping them wheel water. So as we're building this pump station, if we upsize it and get them to pay for those upgrades, then we can also charge them to wheel that water, at which point we'd be generating more revenue for the utility. So we're looking at this project as a possibility to do that.
Great, good to hear that. All right, thank you.
What would be the term of this new contract that you're trying to negotiate with them? What's the term? 5, 10 years or what?
Well, right now the contract that they have is 5 20-year contracts. So they're 20-year terms. So it's a 100-year contract that was put in place in 2003.
Right.
So we're coming up on the end of the first 20-year term, and then it just generally automatically renews. Any work that we would do, any expansion of that, we would do likely outside of that original water supply contract as an additional, or maybe it's an addendum, or it's some kind of a standalone separate contract. But that's all things that we're looking at right now as we are at the beginning of the project.
Okay. Thank you, Peter. Anybody else have any comments? Well, let's all have a blessed Christmas and a good New Year's, and don't anybody get the virus. Wear your mask, wash your hands, and social distance. This comes from the old man. This meeting will be adjourned. Thank you.
See y'all.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.